At 24 years old, for the very, very first time in my life, I began exercising regularly out of an effort to help my body and myself heal instead of out of hate for my body. Confidence, it really is all about self-trust. It's about doing what you say you're gonna do and following through and showing up for yourself. The epiphany that exercise is not what I thought it was changed my life so deeply that I just wanted everyone to know, like, hey, it's not what we think. Most people don't even know that they're struggling because so much of the behavior is not only normalized but almost praised. Self-love is not only the right of every human being, but it's the responsibility. The world needs you to show up for you.
First of all, I'm gonna have you intro just like who you are and what you do. But first, I do wanna say, I'm excited to sit down. I think something I'm really excited about is there's so much depth to clearly like the work that you do and how you approach things that it's kind of just impossible to show all of it in like small bits in social media.
Yeah,
so
amen.
So this will be an attempt to at least begin that. So yeah, your name, what you do.
Cool, I'm Kelsey Wells. I used to say when people asked me what I did that I was a fitness trainer. And not too long ago, my husband looked at me after one of those times and he's like, you know what, I just don't know if you should say that. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you do a lot more than that. And your career isn't being a fitness trainer. And he like challenged me really to say more. And really what I've started to try to push myself to say is that I'm a fitness trainer and I'm a women empowerment advocate. And I am on a mission to help everybody reclaim fitness as the powerful tool for self-empowerment that it was always meant to be, instead of the mentally devastating form of punishment or not enoughness that diet culture has told us it is for way too long.
That's beautiful. I specifically want to dig into a lot of, you've clearly created really beautiful philosophies of like how to view the body and fitness in general. So we'll dig into that as we go. I do want to talk about, like you said, you used to just say you're a fitness trainer. I want to talk a little bit about just kind of like your journey with like Instagram. 3 million followers. Can you kind of walk us through like how that began? Did you always know it was this deep in the mission, or where did it start and how did it get here?
I actually wrote a poem. It's called My Story. And it answers this question of how did I start? Why am I in this career? Why am I doing this? What was the catalyst? I'm trying to like decide if I should recite it to you right now or if I should just try to explain.
Yeah, up to you. We could just talk through it, and then even if it feels right, we can come back.
Okay. Like way too many other people, I struggled a lot in my adolescence and young womanhood with various degrees of disordered eating and I won't say body dysmorphia because I was never diagnosed, but distorted body image. I really just thought that fitness and exercise were tools for shrinking myself, punishing myself, changing however my body was because however it wasn't right or enough or whatever. And I fell pregnant at 24 and it was a big surprise. And after I had my son, I hit a really, really tough phase in my life postpartum. I struggled with postpartum anxiety really severely and some postpartum depression. And those things, they weren't talked about a lot. I certainly was not prepared or like looking out for that kind of stuff. And so when I had my son, it was like, especially with the culture and the religion that I was really fully subscribed to, I felt immense shame because on the one hand, you just hear that it's magical and beautiful and, boundless love and joy. And I did feel those things. But at the exact same time, there was this other reality that during this magical, sacred time, I felt so overwhelmed with sadness and panic and fear, and I started having panic attacks, which I hid even from my husband. I just felt like I was failing at the one thing I was born to do, and I was so scared and so ashamed. And it was during that time, probably like 4 months postpartum, where I was at a postpartum doctor's checkup, and they have you fill out a mental health survey because it's normal to fluctuate mentally when you give birth. And then after a certain period of time, you're supposed to kind of start evening out, and I was getting worse. And I remember filling out that survey, and I thought I lied through it pretty good. I would read a question and think, oh, if I answered correctly, she's gonna be worried about me, so I'm gonna put this one. And so when she came in the room and pretty much very gently, kindly told me that I wasn't doing okay, I'll just never forget that moment in my whole life. But basically at the time, I was very, very averse to therapy or medications or anything like that. I felt like if I did those things, which now I understand are beautiful tools that are so valuable on a mental health journey and taking care of your mental health, back then I thought if I did that, that was just like ultimate failure, and I shouldn't need those things. And so I remember kind of like telling her, what else can I do? Like, I will try anything else. Don't want to go on medication, don't want to go to therapy. And she said, do you exercise? And I was like, what the hell does that have to do with anything? And she said, it might help. There's, endorphins, and she was explaining how physical exercise regularly can help our mental health. And that was so foreign to me. And I told her, absolutely, I'm going to start exercising. I'll do that. And so, long story short, at 24 years old, for the very, very first time in my life, I began exercising regularly out of an effort to help my body and myself heal, instead of out of hate for my body. And it's so crazy because like way before my body composition started shifting in the mirror, or I started to get fitter or stronger or faster or any of those things and build fitness, I started to feel better. I started to be able to wake up and shift that heavy, heavy weight on my chest enough to be present for my son and to see silver linings. And the more I exercised and really developed that habit, really the more I cared for myself from a positive intent, the more my life started to change. And it's crazy because about a year later, so the first year of my fitness journey was very private and personal. I didn't have social media. I didn't share anything with anyone. About a year later, a year and a half later, I went through an even harder mental time when I had what some would call a faith crisis, but when I feel like postpartum is when I really met anxiety on a very personal level, and not too long after that, I really understood what depression was. And I know that because I had this foundation of caring for myself on a very basic way. I had spent a year implementing regular exercise, teaching my body to drink water, like proper hydration, eating vegetables. Like, I really started caring for myself, and I had these habits of showing up for myself. And therefore I'd spent a year gaining confidence, because confidence, it really is all about self-trust. It's about doing what you say you're gonna do and following through and showing up for yourself. And so because I'd spent this year showing up for myself for the very first time and pouring love into myself for the very first time, when I went into this phase that was so devastating, I fell back on those habits, those healthy, good foundational habits, and I just kept showing up and taking care of myself and taking care of my son. And it was a lifeline that really saved me. And so around that time, I became a certified personal trainer. I felt like fitness was my outlet. It was my hobby. It was my interest. And I was so, the epiphany that exercise is not what I thought it was, and not what 17 magazine had taught me it was. changed my life so deeply that I just wanted everyone to know, like, hey, it's not what we think. And I felt really passionate about starting to share my story and just tell other young women, especially other young moms, but anyone struggling with feeling like they're not enough, hating how their body is, and to know like it doesn't have to be that way, and actually it shouldn't be that way. So I actually got on social media and started to share very vulnerably in a time where the fitness, scene on social media was really like, let me flex my abs and do this exercise or don't eat. It's like I was there like, so I had a panic attack last night, but it's okay. And I was just very vulnerable. And a lot of women could relate to that. And I think it was everything that I said. And it's interesting because at that time I had kind of taken a break from my personal Instagram page because it was very unhealthy for me. I would just get on, compare myself to everyone, feel worse, and get off. And so I wasn't using my social media. And when I decided to make this fitness account, I guess I desperately wanted a place where I could show up and be myself and be authentic. And people didn't care what religion I was. People didn't know what I was going through or what I'd been through. I could just talk about my passions and find like-minded women and connect and lift each other up. And so I got on there kind of the opposite of how I was on my personal page, just showing highlights. I promised myself and my husband, like, doing this, it will only always be authentic and speaking from the place of what do I need to hear? Like, what would I have needed to read 1 month postpartum? What would help me at 16? And the whole time, it's almost been 10 years since I started that page, which is insane. Never could have fathomed it would lead to my career. I was doing interior design at the time, that was my degree. Never would have thought that I would become a fitness trainer or be doing any of this, but it all unfolded, and it's been such a privilege because I'm able to have a career that's exceptionally passion-led, and I guess I'm an influencer, but it feels more, the majority of the time it's felt not like a burden, but more of a responsibility almost. Like, I think I always have all the past versions of me in my head, and I'm always aware of the content that I put out and the intent from which I create my content. And I understand I can't control how that's perceived, and some people will hate it and whatever and think different things, but I get to control my own authenticity and my own intentions, and staying true to that reason why I began my career in the beginning has led me to where I am now. And it's been such a fulfilling and surprising and humbling journey. And yeah.
Thank you.
That was a really long answer.
No, that was a perfect answer. You unlocked a lot of like what I want to visit a couple things first, but your story is really powerful. I think it's really empowering how you've not only gone through this healing journey, right, and had to rediscover your relationship with yourself. That was like a theme that I noticed a lot of yesterday. Like, not even discovery of power, but more as this reminder. It's like it's always there. Like, almost the problem is that we don't actively remember it and call back to it and come back to our bodies. And I think something that's really admirable is, I know a lot of that was a commitment to like your son as well, so that you could show up the way that you wanted to. I think there's a lot of bravery as well in that you kind of not only went through this journey, but you're like actively sharing it. And I think in a lot of ways, it's such a cool way that you're tapping into the power of like social media. Like, I know influencer can feel like a bad word sometimes, but I think it's just how you use the influence. And it's really clear that you use it as a way to kind of invite people to go through like similar findings that you had. And I think, especially in a place like social media, a lot of your philosophies are really kind of this antidote for things like, diagnosed or not, like body dysmorphia or just negative self-talk. So, those are ones I kind of want to like revisit with you a little more. You know, a lot of what I thought was going to be hard to do is uncover like what's at stake for you. Why did you come up with these things? So it's a blessing, and thank you for going there to just start with that.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be nice to kind of now grab like specific themes in this and talk a little more through your methods, because I think they're really powerful. I think people intuit that they are something they can get a lot of. And I'm sure so many of your community would love to be in a class like what you led the other day with your close friends. Something that really stuck out to me, your philosophy and how to view your body. I think it's powerful. You had a quote, you said, Shay pointed this out for me, but it was, you know, your body's not your masterpiece, it's the paintbrush you use to create yours. Can you talk a little more like about that?
Yeah. I think it's a lesson that I've learned over and over and over again. And while, you know, it would be lovely to say that I went through these hard things, then I started this career and I started helping women understand these things that I learned, that was the end of my struggles with those things, but that's not true. Throughout my career, I've definitely experienced different levels of disordered eating yet again, and distorted body image again, and they manifest in different ways, so I didn't really recognize it at first, you know, and it's so sneaky. And I think one of the biggest, most devastating pieces of these things is that most people don't even know that they're struggling, because so much of the behavior is not only normalized but almost praised. To talk about food as good or bad, or like, oh, like I didn't eat today, or I was good, I didn't have that pizza, or like those little things, or making fun of yourself or putting yourself down. Like, it's socially acceptable and it's not okay. And I think my inner dialogue was so negative, and I was constantly comparing myself to everyone else, beating myself up. And so many people do that. They look at a photo and they automatically go to pick themselves apart, or they see something or someone else and they automatically feel like they're not enough, or they're comparing themselves. And I thought it was certainly my normal, but I thought that was like innate. And one of the first things that I realized was it's absolutely not, and it's not for anyone. If you think about yourself as, like I think about myself as a little girl, I loved myself. And your body is your expression, like your joy, you're just moving through life and you are so vibrant, and somewhere along the line, so many of us lose that confidence that we're born into. And I really do believe that. I know that self-love is kind of like a trendy, almost cringy at this point, buzzword, but I think it's a shame. My whole platform is staked on self-love, and not in the sense that it's something that you can check off a list or some place that you get to and then you just get to exist, but in the sense that it's a verb. Like, self-love is not only the right of every human being, but it's the responsibility of all of us to remember how to live from that place if we've forgotten. And it's usually not our fault that we've forgotten, but somewhere along the line, I did. And I didn't think that mattered. I didn't know that I could get to a place again in adulthood where I could like see myself how my husband sees me. And it has to start by how you speak to yourself and how you treat yourself. And in a culture and society where it's so normalized to pick yourself apart and all of those things we talked about, it's so important that you first become aware, like, how is my relationship with myself? How am I speaking to myself in my head? And then you accept whatever that looks like. And only then can you take action to shift out of that and to change. And it's a cycle. You're not, like I said, it's not some place where you just get to and then you're good. It's like, it's perpetual, it's all the time, you know? But I'll tell you, the days that I really struggle and am really hard on myself and mean to myself and bully myself are now the exception when they used to be the norm. And I know that it's because of the intentional work that I've done. And the first way that I shifted that dialogue was through movement. Because exercise, for someone who's struggled with these things we're talking about can be very harmful, actually. Even though it's good for our physical bodies, it's good for our heart health. If you are exercising out of a punishment or a chore or out of hate for your body, it's so devastating to your mental well-being and your emotional well-being. Like, hating your body hurts deep in your soul. And if you don't realize that, you are compounding the problem and you're not becoming healthy through exercise. And so identifying ways that I could help others actually make that shift. How do you, if exercise is a negative thing for you, how do you actually change it and use it as a tool for self-empowerment? And I identified 3 steps that after looking back on my journey and all my ups and downs, how did I actually make that shift? And it was pretty simple. I infused mindfulness into it. So if it's all about the difference between a workout that's healthy for your mind and your mental health and one that's hurting it is the intention behind it. That's it. What's your motivation? And if you're being honest with yourself, if it's really just to change how you look because you think you're going to love yourself more if you look differently, that's fine. Become aware of that. Accept that that's the situation, and then you have to take action to change that. And how do you do that? Set an intention. And that's what I do in all of my live trainings, whether it's one girl, whether it's 1,000 girls at a boot camp. I have all the women put their hands on their heart, close their eyes, we deep breathe, we ground ourselves in our bodies, and we choose the intention with which we're going to move our bodies. I'm doing this session to care for myself and my health. I'm doing this session to celebrate my life. I am moving my body out of gratitude for my body. I am exercising out of an effort to make peace with myself. Any positive intention, it takes 30 seconds. I do that in my own mind when I'm at the gym. The second step is to use affirmations, because it's really shockingly powerful how positive psychology works. Like, obviously we hear what we think and we internalize the way we speak to and treat ourselves. And so under times of duress, like when you're stressed, when you're exercising hard, instead of just scrolling on your phone or thinking like, I can't do this is too hard, when you hit those walls, if you really intentionally say, I am strong, I can do hard things, I'm a survivor, it's so powerful. And so infusing, even if it's just picking one affirmation and infusing a positive thought in the hardest, toughest moments of your physical session is very powerful. And then the last step that I do is at the very end, before you rush back off into your day, come back to your heart center and take a moment to just say thank you to your body. I think it sounds so cliche to say, like, just the ability to exercise is such a gift, so don't complain about it. But the fact is, if you are healthy enough to be able to attempt a workout, whether that's jogging or swimming or biking or weightlifting or Pilates or whatever it is, if your physical body is healthy enough for you to move it like that, it is a gift. And it's one that we, just like our sight and our hearing, we take it for granted. And so coming back to yourself and saying thank you for what your body has done in that session, and also just the ways that it shows up for and carries you throughout every second of your life, despite how you speak to or treat it, that might be the most powerful piece to shifting that mindset. And so when you do those things, those 3 things, which it's funny because after I identified those, I realized IAM is the acronym: intentions, affirmations, and moment of gratitude. If you apply that IAM method to whatever way you're going to work out, it takes less than 5 minutes in total to do those things. And in time, you do rewrite how you're moving, not only through your exercise sessions, but through your life. You are changing your brain chemistry to be more positive, to speak to yourself more kindly, to show up for yourself, and you're building confidence in yourself, which is going to shine through every other facet of your life and all of your relationships. If you pour into your relationship with you, it will only positively affect your relationships with everyone that you love. So I think coming back to your intention and starting there is how you really make the shift.
I can't believe this isn't scripted. This is like a master class, by the way. No, this is awesome. Something I noticed about you that I think is really awesome. Like what you said, self-love's become kind of this like buzzwordy thing, but you've like really systematically broken down all of the like microsystems that lead to like self-hatred. It's in all like the self-talk, it's in the perception of body. And, you know, in this compliment, I also have a question at the end. But I think it's really awesome how much you've broken it down. And I think that's provided so much value to people that follow you. You know, I love this idea that, you know, again, not only have you been on this healing journey, but it's also your commitment to share these tools with other people. It makes sense why, of course, Women's Advocate, like, makes sense for what you do. So much of what you do is sharing the power that you found in yourself, too. So I guess a question in attempt to like kind of learn more of like you and your motivations, it must be a lot to like have to kind of reopen these parts of yourself, even now going there. Like clearly these are painful things, yet you still choose to do that, to again like advocate for women and share that. I guess can you share more of, I guess like why? What's the motivation to, why not just heal yourself? Why also try to take, you know, these people on that same journey with you?
I've never been asked that. That's a really, really good question. It's interesting that you say that because it even still surprises me. I have spoken about these things, especially my postpartum journey, so often, and every time it does still, I guess, bring up that emotion, but it actually isn't a pain point anymore, because I think when you allow yourself to really, really feel as often and as deeply as you need to your pain points in your life, something super magical happens and it transmutes into power. And something that I say in every session is that the world tells us that being vulnerable is a weakness, but your vulnerability is and has only ever been your strength. And I think in general, if we can look at our scars and if we can get honest with ourselves enough to go back to our pain points and go through and allow that to flow, each scar is a door. And there's so much power and lessons and joy and peace that comes from full acceptance of whatever it is that you've been through. And the price of any perspective is, I think, almost earned through all the collective experiences that you had to go through to arrive there. And of course, that can always go one of two ways, but we are almost taught like to just not feel the hard things and to keep the doors closed and to not look at your scars and to not go back there. But doing so over and over every time now, when I think about these things and when I share my story, it's not painful anymore. It's empowering and it's healing even still. And it allows a sense of peace. And I think that's why, to answer your question, I continue to do it. Because I really, really believe that every single person on this earth is here for a reason and has a unique path and purpose. And how the hell are they supposed to figure out what that is if on the diet culture side of things, they waste so much of their precious life and energy worried about the food that they're putting in their mouth or how their body looks in the mirror? It's a distraction. And it's a lie. And so if you can be strong enough to go back to your pain points and embrace them, there's nothing you can't do. And you will be led through life more free and at peace. And I think that is the point and the purpose.
Were you editing in your head too?
Yeah.
That was really good. I don't know if we can go anywhere else that wouldn't, like, I think that's the most impactful it's going to get, like this last bit. I mean, unless you have anything else. But I personally, I love how kind of in the heart, like all of this was. I'm glad that last bit came out too. I'm like, I don't know, I'm pretty starstruck because like that last bit, it's so crazy that none of this is scripted. But I think it's something people feel like even through the screen. It's like, it's so clear. Not only, of course, do you like deeply believe this, but your life has become fully about like the mission that's obvious. You know, I understand the conversation of your husband. It's like, man, you do so much more, right? Like, this is something I relate to as well. Like, I think when the mission is so deep, everything else just kind of becomes a tool to do that. Like, fitness is just one thing that you do to kind of get here. These classes are one things that you do to get here. So, I don't know. I think mostly just like thank you for going there with this.
You're very welcome.
I think there's like a lot we can do on our end with this as well. But thank you. I think that's it, right?
Awesome.
Unless there's anything else to say.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm just want to say thank you to you guys because I do a lot of interviews and it's usually pretty surface level, which is fine. And I always try to like thread the needle, weave in some of this, you know, to every answer, but to just have somebody that wants what's real, it means a lot. So thank you.
Totally. And your realness is really valuable. There was like a lot in there. So like, I was telling Shay in high school, I struggled with anorexia. I was like bulimic. There was just like, it's a lot of like internalized racism too, living in Salt Lake.
I can't imagine. I really can't.
Yeah, Filipino people are like, what is that? Is
You
it
grew
a
up
food?
here?
You know what I mean? Yeah, I grew up here since I was 20. So like a lot of, you know, Shay's taught me so much about how to talk to my body as well and like listen to it in a different way. So this has been like a valuable extension for me to these like reframes, you know? So thank you. I think in this room, like obviously there's so much weight and you can feel it. I know it's impossible for that not to translate through here. So, you know, next steps is, of course, we'll work on like our side of it, turn in like the full thing as well. But I don't know, I guess you sit with that like when you're ready. But I think that's really beautiful stuff to share. There's so many one-liners. I think the full experience was there. There's a lot of questions I was ready to kind of like take us there, and you just did it, which is awesome.
I'm always ready to.
Yeah,
like,
which is
I feel like I'm begging.
No. Well, it's just evidence that like, you know, your self-talk is this kind of dance, you know. It's like all of these questions and these triggers, they're invitations to go there again.
Yes.
A lot of people will shove it out, but like clearly a lot of your
And I also want it to be so clear, and this is the part that I think I struggle with the most because it's so hard to bring this through a reel, you know, or whatever. But I speak about this so openly, and it's never from a place of like, I'm better than or I'm above. I think I can speak to this so honestly because I get it. And I think that's the most important thing is I've learned that vulnerability brings connection and connection allows healing. And if I can be someone's catalyst, like my son was mine, to helping them remember how to live from that place of self-love, to knowing that no matter how many times you go back and struggle with those same triggers, it doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're regressing. It doesn't mean that you're failing. It just means that you're moving through it again. And every single time you do, you're learning something different. You're coming out on the other side stronger. And I continue to struggle in different ways in my life. We all do. But continuing to choose to pour love into yourself is the single most important thing. And there's like so much power and joy, and I don't know, it feels like an urgency, like the world needs you to show up for you. And you don't realize how powerful you are and your impact is, and for your son, for your friends, for your family. Like the best way to love them is to love you. And so I guess I get scared that speaking from these things, it's like I'm not trying to teach people because I'm above any of it. It's because I fully live it. And I continue to choose, no matter how much I've struggled, to keep showing up for me and pour love into me. And I know that if others knew how much everyone else struggles, there would be a weight lifted, you know? And I think it's time to just set down the masks a little bit and be more real. So
I think it comes across the way you want it to. Like I think patronizing is when you're like, hey, I know better.
Yeah.
But what I love about your dialogue, it's very internal. Like it starts very much with like, I've been there, I understand that. I think a lot of people will be surprised even hearing you've been there. And I think you're such an antidote for like a lot of what you're fighting too. Because I think there's a lot of people, it's like, oh man, like if I look like you, I wouldn't think this way. But it's like, no, like how I look is evidence of the deeper work that I've done of how I treat my body. Like this is just a symptom of something that you should cherish more, which is how I talk to myself. Like
and you
how
know what,
I do
if
my
you think
body.
about, you just said something like symptom, and it's, if you think about it, like how like a vaccine is created, or like our bodies build up defenses, our immune systems on a physical level to sicknesses only once they've been exposed. Our body doesn't know how to fight something unless they've fought it and have struggled with it. And then we come back stronger and more prepared. And it's like, I think when you just said like the antidote, it is because of my own struggles, right? Like and I think that's, I don't know, I love that thought that you just presented. I think that's really powerful. Like when we struggle with something, we get the opportunity to make our own antidote out of that place, and we are stronger every other time we have to face it, right?